الشيطان الرجيم. سورة الإنسان. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هل أتى على الإنسان حين من الدهر لم يكن شيئا مذكورا. إنا خلقنا الإنسان من نطفة أمشاج نبتليه فجعلناه سميعا بصيرا. إنا هديناه السبيل إما شاكرا وإما كفورا. إنا أعتدنا للكافرين سلاسل وأغلالا وسعيرا. إن الأبرار يشربون من كأس كان مزاجها كافورا. عينا يشرب بها عباد الله يفجرونها تفجيرا. يوفون بالنذر ويخافون يوما كان شره مستطيرا. ويطعمون الطعام على حبه مسكينا ويتيما واسيرا. إنما نطعمكم لوجه الله لا نريد منكم جزاء ولا شكورا. إنا نخاف من ربنا يوما عبوسا قمطريرا. صدق الله العظيم.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihil ameen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh once again. Welcome to the fifth and last session of this month-long campaign that we had titled In the Light of Ramadan. So Alhamdulillah, we have had some brilliant sessions over the course of the last 3-4 weeks by Dr. Khaja Alwa, Dr. Said Mustafa, Dr. Kamran Deen, Rahmatin is our teacher, and inshallah we'll be having another brilliant session today by none other than Dr. Farooq Murad. So before we hand over to Farooq Said, I just wanted to quickly give an introduction of what's been happening for those who are joining this session for the first time. Alhamdulillah, Velicham Europe is an online community that focuses on learning Islam. And Strive UK, as most of you might know, is an organization that's based out of UK that aspires to present Islam in its most beautiful form as a comprehensive way of life, as most beneficial for all of humanity and, for that matter, for the entire world. So continuous learning of the Quran and the Sunnah, eliciting solutions for our day-to-day problems from the Quran, more educationary sessions, engaging with the community, advocacy on social issues. These are some of the activities that we do conduct, and we, alhamdulillah, with the immense support of the community as well. We've been making some good presence in the last couple of years. So we pray that we can bring such sessions to you in future as well. And we would really consider it a big success if at least a few people have got the message through this campaign. Along with this campaign, we did conduct, or we have been conducting an online quiz program for youngsters, especially from the age of 5 to 18. The participation has been really brilliant, and again, we consider that as a big success. At least if we have inspired 1 or 2 people to learn and understand the Quran. So we pray at the start itself that may Allah accept all these efforts and all our right intentions. Today's speaker, Farooq Sahib, doesn't need a lot of introduction. He's so very well known within within the Muslim community here in the UK. He is the Director General of the Islamic Foundation of Leicester, son of a more illustrious dad, Dr. Farooq Murad Sahib's legacy he has. So he'll be speaking to us today, inshallah. Before we get into Dr. Sahib's session, I just wanted to let you know last week's quiz session has the announcements of the winners will happen once Farooq Sahib finishes his session, and in the interval that we have between the session and the question answers, inshallah, we'll announce the winners of last week's quiz and the overall winners. So without further ado, I call upon Farooq Sahib to deliver the speech.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. My very dear brothers and sisters, those who have made the effort to get up on Sunday morning in Ramadan, Saturday morning in Ramadan, and be here with us today. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless your efforts, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you all have a very joyous, blessed, and safe Ramadan, inshallah, in your homes, most probably most of you. But it is a wonderful time for us to be with our families and also to reflect in this month of reflection, and considering the huge crisis the world is going through, that what can we learn as Muslims and what can we contribute? From that point of view, I think empowering the self, which is the topic for today, is quite an appropriate one. Though some people say they don't like this whole concept of self-empowerment because they say it kind of assumes and indicates that we are disempowered. And so first of all, I think I refute that criticism by saying that, to me, empowerment is not a destination that we arrive at. Empowerment is an ongoing process. That's how I understand empowerment. And that's how I think also Islam presents the idea of empowering ourselves. So this is an appropriate topic, but I think we all want to be empowered. We like the idea of being in power and control of our lives, but what does empowerment really means? It's not nice to be disempowered. A quick search, if you did a quick search, we would come across ideas such as empowerment means taking control of one's own life, follow one's goals, be able to make our personal positive emphasis on positive choices, the ability to make decisions, again, timely decisions, because when we are not empowered, we postpone our decisions and we get overwhelmed. And as I read a beautiful definition of being overwhelmed, is actually clutter in our mind, and clutter represents postponed decisions, which you're not able to decide because you're empowered to make those decisions. And also other definitions would include authority to act, and at a more transcendental level, and a deeper level, they would talk about empowerment really means inner peace, being able to love oneself and others, capacity to love and capacity to give, capacity to control anger and continue in a direction, one's chosen direction in life. Self-determination also comes in, and believing in self. That's another idea of empowerment. I would also add, personally, to me, empowerment is the ability to live up to one's potential. And that obviously, we all have huge potentials, and as Muslim, and we believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us the best of as the best of creation. And we also understand from scientific analysis that most of us do not live up to our full potential. Even in terms of the capacity of our brain, we use only a tiny fraction of that capacity of our brain. So that's what empowerment is. Now, assuming these definitions of empowerment, I reflected as to what would be a great example of self-empowerment that we, or humanity, I would say, have witnessed. And obviously, to my mind came the companions or Ashab Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I mean, in the historical context, if you look at the history of the time and technology of the time, as to where they were placed in this barren valley of Mecca, and while there were other power centers of the world, and what they possessed and had was next to nothing. No big monuments, no big building technology, nothing at all. But how they, within a very short space of time, were so empowered that they were able to make their decisions and move out and take this hidayah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to far off corners of the world. I mean, it is the most amazing historical empowerment that took place in the hands of Rasulullah sallallahu with his companions. And hence, quite correctly, whilst discussing with the family that I've got this talk to do, empowering the self, and what should I talk about? And my daughter just said, empowering the self is Islam. Islam is the empowerment, is the ultimate empowerment that we can have. But what that would be too simple. And I told them that I've got to speak for 40 minutes. So I thought it's good to break it down as to what really happened. We need to reflect. What were the key ingredients of that amazing process of empowerment, self and community empowerment that took place? What unleashed so much energy in these people, so much goodness that came out, and such profound impact on this earth. So reflecting over that, a number of ideas I could look into came to my mind. But I would like to focus on 5 key ingredients. And the good news is that many of us know some of these, but in a way that it does not help us. So I would like to just try to change the perspective and the way we look at some of these ingredients. 5 key ingredients which were at the center of that process of empowerment that took place. And the good news is that today we have those ingredients available, and we can actually make them alive once again and work for us to give us self-empowerment. And so that was the first one. And in fact, once we understand these ingredients, understand these things as ingredients of self-empowerment, those things will begin to take a different meaning in our lives. In fact, I would say that we will understand so much of the Quran and Seerah and Sunnah in a more meaningful way and more productive way for our lives. So what's the first one? The first ingredient without any doubt, was the power of Iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Something as simple as that. But the problem is that we understand this Iman Billah as an article of faith. You know, when we especially those of us who grew up as heritage Muslims in Muslim families, So when we grow up, we are sent to madrasa and we have this qaida and books where we are taught. We are taught the basic uh, uh, articles of iman, of faith. Allah, Rasul, Akhira, Malaika, destiny, and so on. And that's how we learn. But we've not opened our minds to what are we really believing in? What does that really mean? So faith remains a theory, an article, a baggage that we carry in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But it has not reached the point of being a kind of light bulb that enlightens and brightens us from inside us. And we suddenly begin to see and feel the power of that Iman Billah. And that's what happened to companions. They came alive. They understood because there was very powerful Quran being read, and Rasulullah who presented it in a way that as if he saw this reality. So it was like a real reality, the Iman Billah in Akhirah. And that moved them. And in fact, Iman, Allah himself, interestingly, Allah himself calls himself Nur. Allahu Nurus Samawati wal Ard, that he is the light, that he removes all the darkness. And so that light bulb effect should happen really once we believe in Allah. And this empowerment is mentioned, the opposite of that is mentioned as dhulumat, darkness. So like when we read as Ayatul Kursi, after that mentioning the 7-8 qualities of Allah, the longest verse in the Quran which describes nothing but Sifatullah, then it continues in the following verse as to what Allah does. Allah waliyul ladhina amanu yukhrijuhum min adh-dhulumati ila nur. That is empowerment. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the guardian, the Lord, the protector who takes care of those who believe in him. And what does that belief does to them? Yukhrijuhum min adh-dhulumati ila nur. That belief means that Allah takes them out of darkness, that land of confusion, of disempowerment, of bright land, ila nur, min adh-dhulumati ila nur. And those who disbelieve, about them it is said that they are the friends. And wali can also be seen as friend, that taking somebody as powerful as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as friend, what could be more empowering than that? And regarding those who disbelieve, it is said, يُخْرِجُونَهُمْ مِنَ النُّورِ إِلَى الظُّلُمَاتِ. They take the taghut, take them from light to darkness. So this is the whole, the article of faith needs to become a kind of state of mind where we are connected to the most powerful and act. And I've seen definitions where they say that, empowerment means you act in a composed, dignified manner, but that all is the outcome, manifestation of belief in Allah, that once you have the power with us, we actually become empowered. Another thing said about empowerment is that it is also that sense of gratitude that we believe we have what we need to be able to function, to work, to be happy. And again, shukr has been mentioned as one of the basic article of believing in Allah. The basic act of believing in Allah is to be grateful to him. That's why Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen is actually, hamd is a form of shukr. And shukr is also presented as the opposite of kufr in the Quran. So opposite of kufr, disbelief, is not iman, is mentioned as gratitude, being grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you can imagine when one begins one's day and one's life, and one's state of mind is one of gratitude, of being gratitude and of shukr, is one where one starts with have, that I have something wonderful. Then again, the other dimensions of this power of Iman is that once we have that Iman, we know that someone is in control of everything. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, I was only reading this morning in Surah Bani Israel, that, you know, how Allah comments this childish attitude of human beings, that when we are suddenly in a situation of discomfort or out of our comfort zone, particularly he mentions the example of when we board ship, then we purify our devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَإِذَا رَكِبُ الْفُلْكَ دَعْوُ اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ فَإِذَا رَكِبَ الْفُلْكَ دَعْوُ اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ, that when they board the ship, they make all their call purely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he says that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala delivers them, فَلَمَنْ نَجَّاهُمْ إِلَى الْبَرِّ, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala delivers them back to the land, then they begin to associate and become ungrateful again to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in life, again and again, we have this behavior. Then Allah comments on this behavior in Surah Bani Israel, saying that how do they know that, you know, that the earth which they feel safe, that it will not open up and they will sink into it, or a wind will not blow on that land and earth like a cyclone and blow them away, that they actually are, whichever situation we are in. Iman Billah means that we are always, in every situation, know one reality, one thing, that He is in control. Whatever we are getting, not getting, our situation is completely in His control. No one on this earth ultimately controls the affairs of this earth except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another dimension is they talk about self-esteem, that the fact that He has created us is best of creation, the fact that He's created us for a purpose, the fact that He's not created us as useless, the fact that He's created us to receive His highest reward of Jannah al-Firdaus. All of these are the part of the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who He is to us. The fact that if you remember Him, He remembers us in a better company. That, you know, فَاسْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرُكُمْ, you remember me and I'll remember you. The fact that He sustains us, the fact that, you know, our success and failure is in His hand, our risk, every risk and breath that we take, every cell that moves in our body is in His control. This is the ultimate control, and believing in that actually is quite empowering idea if we understand like that. Another dimension or impact of this belief is that everything is possible. Quite often we become hopeless, so we lose hope, which is actually the quality of shaitan, that he lost hope. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that he lost hope. And the word Iblis also, as we understand, its root meaning is one who lost hope. Is that believing in Allah keeps us always aware of the fact that if He is in control, and He is who He is, the most powerful, the owner of everything, the living, always there, always will be there for us in this life, before this life, after this life, then that kind of opens the idea in our minds, and should very firmly, that, you know, everything is possible. We can try and do whatever we need to do, and things can happen. Even when all the odds are against, it seems very impossible, things are possible, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we call upon Him and He can make it happen. So this is the first point I wanted to like to conclude by saying that it should bring us, as we say, to the land of the brave and free, and that is living in such a place, you know, in terms of state of mind, is the kind of empowerment Sahaba Ridwanullahi ta'ala ajma'in, may Allah be pleased with all of them, they acquired from belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He does say that, have no fear. فَلَا تَخْشَوْهُمْ. Fear, don't fear them. وَخْشَوْنِي, and fear me. وَلِأُتِمَّ عَلَيْكُمْ نِعْمَتِي, that so that I can fulfill my ni'mah, my favors upon you. So his favors would be fulfilled, and his guidance, وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَهْتَدُونَ, and you may be guided. That will only happen when we purify our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala truly. It's a state of, it's not an article of faith, brothers and sisters. It is a state of mind, a state of being. It gives meaning, purpose, hope, and direction, everything. And that is that connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second point I have chosen is self-empowerment, self-development. That's the topic, self-empowerment. Self-development, continuous self-development. This is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions. He says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, successful. In fact, believers are successful. They have become successful. And goes on to say, الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي الزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ. They are the ones who are engaged and busy, فَاعِلُونَ, busy in purification, in zakat. And the word zakat is purification. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى. The one who has purified has become successful. And what is this self-purification? Self-purification is, in modern term, also can be understood as self-development. Of course, purification is inner development, but also of amal, our character, ourselves. And that is, quite often we are chasing certain goals. We want to achieve certain things in nama or in life, even in worldly and material life. And we can have business goals, we can have personal goals, but a lot of that depends on making ourselves, building our capacity to be able to do better, to be able to give more, to be able to perform better. And that is in Islamic from Islamic point of view also, tazkiyah is that continuous process. And that is why you can see Islam gives us a whole program for self-development. If you look at our 5 daily prayers, what are they? They are 5 times of remembrance, of reminders, 5 times of self-evaluation, 5 times of getting our focus right. That is part of self-development. And the Quran, the book of Hidayah, which is a book which is supposed to take us to our destiny, to our success, the month in which that book is revealed, which is this month, the great month of Ramadan, that makes it such a blessed month. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what did he ask us to do in that month? Because Quran is revealed, he has asked us to fast so that we can develop that quality, inner quality of taqwa. So self-development is something that we can all, my brothers and sisters, can commit ourselves to through our organizational programs, through self-learning. And I'm talking about a whole range of things, not just acquiring the knowledge of deen, etc., but as persons, we should continuously commit ourselves to develop ourselves, learning new skills, new knowledge. Especially knowledge is very important. For example, in Islam, there are 2 things. One is piety, zuhud, and one other thing is ilm, knowledge. And we know there are hadiths which say an alim's status is higher. That famous hadith of Rasulullah SAW, in which he mentions how someone commits 99 murders, and then he goes to a zahid, someone who is pious person. We have muttaqi, pious people, we recognize them. So he goes to one of them and asking whether there was any hope for him after such a lousy and a life of committing such heinous crimes. Can he still, is there still any hope for him? And Zahid says, no, there's no hope for him. So he kills him as well. And the hadith in Sahih Bukhari goes on to say, then he goes to an alim And alim says, no, there is hope for you. You should do tawbah and should go on. So long hadith said it's not the topic for the day. But what people forget in this hadith is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a difference between a zahid and an alim. Alim is able to find, because he's got ilm and knowledge, able to make decisions, find solutions, and see hope. So ilm comes also our faith in our life and and hope in there being hope, as hope is always there as long as we are living. So that's the second thing. Third thing, I would say the ingredient I find, and in the Quran also mentioned for self-empowerment, is this quality of sabr. Now, sabr is like the belief in Allah requires new understanding. It means that, first of all, we should understand tough, difficult circumstances does not mean failure. And failure does not mean failure. You know, we can have failures. It does not mean the real failure. So tough circumstances is not failure. The great poet of India, and since many of you listeners are from India, and some of you may also know Urdu, Iqbal, as you know, Iqbal in his poetry, he quite often takes this example of an eagle to empower ourselves for empowering the Muslims who had lost their destiny and direction, as he saw, and were at the receiving end and had been colonized. And he mentions this example of an eagle quite often in his poetry. Is this Iqbal's eagle is the Muslim youth who should get up and get going. And therefore, for example, he mentions that, you know, you should not have your goals the palaces of kings, but you're an eagle. Your goal should be the peaks of the mountains. That's where you should live. But he also talks about another place about this difficult circumstances. And he says that, if you allow me, I could read the beautiful couplet in Urdu. तुंदी बादी मुखालिफ से ना घबरा ए अकाब ये तो चलती है तुझे ऊंचा उड़ाने के लिए. Do not be afraid and scared of these opposing winds. They actually are there to raise you further, higher. And it's true, you know, planes always take off, as you know, against the wind. You need opposing wind to rise above. And so self-development is something we can all commit to, no matter what our circumstances are. We can make every day a learning day where we learn, commit ourselves to acquiring new knowledge, new skills, and also purifying ourselves all the time. Use the salah for inner purification, reconnecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reviving the belief in Him and His power, thinking of His power. All of that is part of self-development. And the most successful life that we think of in terms of Prophet's life is the Prophet's life. And it's an ideal life for us. And Quran also mentioned, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Indeed, for you in the life of Rasulullah is the best example. But if I were to mention to you that life from the worldly perspective and say to you, there is this person, you know, his father passed away before he was born, and I tell you that this is a person whose mother passed away when he was as young as 2, and his grandfather passes away, and he's looked after by his uncle, and even when the whole world seemed to be against him, he loses the protection of his uncle and wife at the age of that 52, 3, when there doesn't seem to be anything ahead of him. You would say it's a very kind of unfortunate life, or it's kind of tough life. And how can such a person ever do and be anything? But this is the person who empowered an amazing nation, as we just heard, as I just said before. So Rasulullah's example, life should give us that hope that, you know, in life all kind of tests and trials come, but we can live a very productive and successful life by continuously developing ourselves. Fourth point, since my time is about 5-7 minutes to cover my last two ingredients for self-empowerment. Fourth is istighfar, which is, Adam alayhi salam and Hawa alayhi salam. From the story of the Quran, when I reflect over it, that before being sent down to this earth, what was in their training program, we all go through Ijtima and Tarbiyah programs and training programs. They were also put into a training program. So what was the main thing after giving them the knowledge? As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Allama Adam al-Asma kullaha, because it was a knowledge that made him that being, and after that knowledge he was put into Jannah, and then he committed the error, the mistake. And what was he taught? He was taught the basic thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught him, the kalimat of istighfar. And then he did istighfar, and that was the most important training. So it also connects to sabr. I mentioned sabr is that resilience and a steadfastness to continue to get up, seek forgiveness, and get going. But istighfar is also this fact that as long as we are alive, we are living, and no matter what kind of mistake we might have made and not achieved and done, we can turn to Allah and start again. Many of us have been reflecting over the Quran, I'm sure, in this month of Ramadan. And if you look at Surah Al-A'raf to Surah Bani Israel, this whole series of surahs from Surah number 7 to 17. And in these surahs, besides two, Al-Anfal and At-Tawbah, which were revealed in Medina, but all of them are predominantly not just Makki surahs, but they are actually revealed towards the last stage of Prophet's life in Mecca. And those of us who know Sirah, they would know that the 13 years that he spent in Mecca, his last stage was very tough years. In fact, when Surah Hud was revealed, Prophet once expressed this thing that it had made him old. And in these surahs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kind of Makkans having not listened, not acknowledged to his call to Islam, and having persecuted him and having opposed him and having not believed in his promises and victory. In this last surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dwells on how earlier nations who were given the message, and when they rejected, what kind of punishments fell upon them, how they were destroyed again and again. But what I find interesting, and this is what we need to learn, is that all along in these surahs, whilst they are being warned, but the message of hope is also goes continuously in these surahs. That he is forgiving, he is merciful, he will forgive you. Ghafur Rahim, come back, he will forgive you. And that goes all the way in these surahs, right to the end. Even with Bani Israel, and Surah Bani Israel, it's mentioned that, that after I delivered you twice before, after two major debacles they faced, that they again spread corruption on this earth. But then again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, before Prophet leaving to Medina, and of course, coming to the community of Bani Israel again, I kind of advanced hope, a message of hope and forgiveness is being issued from Makkah, even at that time. So that is istighfar. Istighfar is to seek that forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And finally, my ingredient is they were the people who were free from, nowadays that use the term, emotional cancers. And if we read hadith literature, whether it is Adab al-Mufrad particularly, but Sahih Bukhari collections, and Islam generally, it constantly frees us from emotional cancers because they are very disempowering. They are not a way to live one's life, an empowered life. What are they? They're like hasad. The surah, last but one surah, we seek Allah's forgiveness from jealousy, resentment, grudge, being begrudged. And again, that brings to my mind that famous incidents when Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said to companions, do you want to know someone who is going to paradise? And he pointed to a person, and one companion went to live with him for 3 days to find out what was so special about him, and found out that he wasn't that somebody who was doing that many more nawafil and prayers. And then he asked Prophet ﷺ, what was, we did not notice anything special. And Prophet ﷺ said, he does not keep any grudge in his heart. So cleansing our heart from grudges against friends and relatives, against people who have hurt us. There's no place for resentment for an empowered person. No regret, no resentment. And this attitude, the emotional cancer of being complaining, comparing and competing, even in modern literature, Stephen Covey's book, The Eighth Habit, which is more voluminous than his first book, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, he mentions these emotional cancers of personality, and mentions these things, cynicism, because that means we do not find our voice. That means we're disempowered. That means we let others control us. So we need to free ourselves from those. And that's what Islam teaches us, to forgive, to do ihsan, to overlook people with whom we have to live and work with, and always keep ourselves light from that point of view. So to conclude, I would say Islam teaches us self-empowerment. It teaches self-empowerment through, first of all, understanding we have been born as empowered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be able to, He's given us of belief, of hidayah, of worship, meditation, dhikr, prayer. He's given us the instruction to be steadfast, to continue, and to seek forgiveness, and to revive ourselves, and to forgive others. And through these basic ingredients, we will achieve, inshallah, amazing self-development. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair, Dr. Saab. That was a really insightful talk. Ingredients of empowerment, mashallah. I know many of us, many of the listeners would have a lot of questions and comments to make on that. Inshallah, we'll get into that section in a couple of minutes. But before we do that, I just wanted to make sure that we are announcing the winners of last week's quiz program. As I mentioned earlier, we have had this online campaign for the last month, and to inspire kids to learn the Quran. We have had this, so I'll hand over to Azim to make those announcements. And just one more reminder: we have had the Islamic, the Arabic calligraphy course as well going on. There's been a lot of interest from the younger kids, mashallah. So this weekend, or rather tomorrow, we have the last session for that. So based on the interest, the teacher has also mentioned that if there is interest, probably he can consider doing some courses later on as well. But mashallah, well attended on that one as well. Over to you, Azim, so that you can declare the winners. And then all listeners, please be prepared with your questions so that once the announcement is made, we can come back onto the questions and comments on the session that Dr. Farooq just did. Aziz?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam.
The weekly Islamic quiz series for youngsters, which has been running for the last 3 weeks. It was actually intended to motivate the youngsters of age below 19 years and to motivate time and effort to understand Holy Quran during the holy month of Ramadan. The format of the quiz was planned to encourage the participants to research and learn more about surahs and prophets, inshallah. Our intention was not just to have a mere quiz competition, but to generate curiosity and encourage learning. If the children seeked help, the parents were advised to consider giving them details of the historical facts rather than a direct answer. Alhamdulillah, there were many participants from the Europe and UK. The winners of quizzes were announced every week, and the details have been published in the Strive website as displayed on the screen here. We hope that all the winners during the past weeks have already received a separate email regarding the prizes. We have also published the answer keys to the questions for all the previous quizzes on the website already. The winners altogether, the winners each week, and also the final winner were identified based on the points scored in the quiz. In the event of a tie for the top scorers, the winners were identified through a lucky draw. Please note that there were few participants who got the same score after the evaluation. So while we understand that this is not really a completely fair way to the participants, we have, however, used all their scores for deciding the overall winner after completing all the 3 rounds of quizzes. Inshallah, we hope that this has helped a bit to even up this case. On behalf of Velicham Europe and Strive UK, we would like to appreciate all your efforts in attending the quiz series. We hope that the quiz was interesting and has encouraged the youngsters to research and learn more about Allah's Deen. We look forward to your continued participation and support in future events too. Now, coming to the announcement of the winners, regarding the winner for last week, that is quiz number 2, for the juniors category, the winner was already announced last week. However, for some potential duplicate answers were identified for few questions. So we have decided, we have considered these answers and re-evaluated the quiz 2 responses. This has resulted in announcing one more winner for the quiz 2. There is, however, no change in the first winner's status. So the additional winner for the quiz 2 for the juniors category is Saliha Ashraf from UK. Let's congratulate her. Now coming back to quiz 3, the third week's quiz, for the seniors category, the winner is Safa Rahmatullah from the UK. And for the juniors category, the winner is Zayan Bensir from Germany. Finally, the overall winners. So here we had considered the scores from all the last 3 quizzes, and the top scores were tallied, and the top scores were considered, and it was kind of close competition between the first and second place for the seniors category. So the seniors group, the overall winner is Safa Rahmatullah from the UK, and for the juniors category, the winner is Eshal Shahir Kolatori. So let's congratulate both the winners and overall winners of the quiz series. Inshallah, this is something which we will take forward in the future too. So we look forward to your participation, active participation for the future events too. Thanks. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah, great participation, and once again, congrats to all the winners. We really hope this has inspired some of our kids to delve deeper into the Quran, research in the Quran, and get more jewels from the Quran. So inshallah, we'll consider that as our success more than the number of participants. Alhamdulillah, it was well participated as well, but if we have inspired at least a few to learn deeper and understand the get into the depths of the Quran, inshallah, that will be the greatest success. MashaAllah, once again, congrats to all the participants. Now for the questions, if you want to type away questions on the chat window, please feel free to do that. If you want to, there is a raise hand option as well. So if you want to raise your hand, and then the moderator can give you an opportunity to ask the questions. So please do that. So when those are probably typing away, let me. On this topic of freeing ourselves of this emotional cancer, I know it was towards the end. So how that really pulls us down. There are so many examples in the Quran that how it really burns our own hearts and it pulls us down. Right? So I think, especially in the context of Islamic organizations as well, right? This competitiveness that is ongoing, rather than recognizing that we are all in it for the same reason. Unfortunately, there is this one-upmanship, or whatever you want to call it, right? So people unfortunately take it to a different extent. Competing and doing good is absolutely good, right? But to outshine or being, I don't know, is that something that being a community leader as well, right? How do we deal with those kinds of, as organizations, and we all work towards the benefit or establishing the deen on the land or the world, right? So
no, that's good point, because this contending and competing can be positive thing, can be negative thing, and obviously, as Quran itself has asked us to sabiqu bil khairat, that compete, take with each other in doing good. And there was healthy competition, as we know, amongst the Sahabas as well, that, at the time before the Ghazwa Tabuk, Umar radiallahu anh thought that today he would outdo Abu Bakr radiallahu anh. And Umar radiallahu anh decided to bring half of everything he had. During the time of Ghazwat, when Prophet used to collect the wherewithal for the battle. And that was the only time, by the way, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala considered that spending to defend Medina and Islam to be a qard to him, when he says, Man dha alladhi yuqridu Allah qardan hasana, qard hasan. That qard and debt did not mean that it would be paid back by the Prophet, that Allah would pay it back, inshallah, manyfold more. At that time, Umar radiallahu anh decides to take half of everything, such great rewards, and thought he would outdo Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, and Abu Bakr radiallahu anh had brought everything and said Allah and His messengers were enough for him. So this just shows you a very healthy competition we have. That is very nature of human life, and that's how we excel in life, by trying to compete with each other. And you just had a quiz competition as well, mashallah, as you just saw. So that's good. But it can be negative sometimes when we lose the bigger picture. And sometimes what happens in our organizations, they take a narrow and smaller picture, and also this mentality of scarcity. And it's all there in modern literature, that, this mentality of scarcity rather than abundance, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give everybody what they deserve, and everybody can grow in this ecosystem. The idea that if I'm growing, others have to lose, or this win and loss mindset. Strategically, we should always go for a win-win mindset. So organizations have to look for win-win mindset as well. And as individuals also, when we help others to grow, we grow ourselves. When we help our staff to grow, we also grow as a business, and I become bigger. And so this is a very well-learned idea of positive competition, as opposed to negative, when we're trying to undermine others and we take this narrow view of life, that if I were to win, others have to lose, and if others win, then I have lost. I think we need to get rid of that mindset. There's a question here from Sister Salma, saying that it's just disappeared now, so I've not even read it.
So can empowerment lead to arrogance if not careful? How can we avoid arrogance creeping in as we grow?
Yes, arrogance is not just an emotional cancer. Arrogance is the biggest obstacle in the way to Islam and self-empowerment. So kibr and arrogance is something that is quite the opposite of iman. So iman should keep us well away from arrogance, and it's something we need to obviously continuously check. That's why we put our head on the floor 5 times. We've been taught to put our head on the floor 5 times a day. So I'm not sure how arrogance comes into self, because self-development actually begins by recognizing the fact that I need to develop myself, and I need to, through development, become empowered to be able to do more. And I will come again to expansion of our mindset and our view of the life and the world will make us quite humble. Quite often, as they say, more knowledge you acquire, more humble you become. More you know, more you also know how less you know. So I think if you remember this, then there is no room for arrogance. But arrogance is something we have to watch against all the time and do istighfar against it all the time. I was only discussing 2 days ago about my brother asked me this question about shirk, that shirk is the greatest zulm, the greatest wrong. And when we think of shirk, we think of obviously worshipping statues or having other idols in terms of our faith, which we worship. But as we know in hadith literature, shirk has 70 categories of shirk, and the most khafif, or the less shirk is perhaps to eat an apple and think that the apple will benefit you. So then I was saying to my viewers that shirk is the whole life is purifying. If the reality of Allah can completely dawn upon us, we'll be totally different human beings, obviously. We will be so empowered, and our status will be so amazing. So why we aren't? Because quite often we are placing a little bit of trust here and there on other beings, organizations, environments, circumstances, having control over ourselves. To me, that is a khafif kind of shirk that continues, and we seek forgiveness from it all the time. Prophet ﷺ said that he used to seek forgiveness 100 times a day, some hadith 70 times a day. So what was he seeking forgiveness of? Because not that we know of any sins that he was committing that would come to our mind, that we, when think of seeking forgiveness, we try to recall what sins we have. It is this thing that we become disempowered as we live our life from morning till evening, when we, in some form, even a minor form, begin to place our hopes and trust on people, what they hold for us, and give that power that belongs to Allah. We begin to feel and think this power belongs to somebody else. And so we say astaghfirullah, and more we become conscious of that. When it says become conscious of Allah, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu aminu, or you believe, or become God conscious. It is about that continuous process, daily process of purifying our loyalty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that also overcomes that sense of arrogance.
MashaAllah.
Okay, mashallah, brother. Okay, disappeared again. Brother Saghir, you might have to read that for me.
Yeah, so Brother Sabil has a question. MashaAllah, excellent talk. Jazakallah khair. What would your advice be on time management in our journey towards empowerment? And also, please, could you share some...
Sorry, I didn't catch the second part.
On time management in our journey towards empowerment.
Okay.
And also, please, could you share some good sources we can further read and reflect on?
Okay. You see, life is time, and quite often we think that we die on a particular day. Okay, so we think if somebody lives 60 years, we think he died on the day he died. He died on such and such day. I think we develop a different view of life. And that is, we begin life and we arrive on this earth with that 60 years, if that's what's written for us. And dying is happening every day, because every day that 60 years is reducing. And every day we die a part of our life. And that's how life disappears. The final death is just confirmation that time has run out. But time is running out all the time, so death is taking. And ironically and incidentally, subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom, that He actually makes us die every day as well, because the dua we read in the morning, Alhamdulillah ahyana ba'da amatana wa ilayhi nushur. Ba'da ma amatana wa ilayhi nushur. Praise be to Allah who made us alive after we were dead, and to Him is our return. So that, if anything, as a Muslim, that should give us that sense of value of time. Every day is a day. That's why we should not get worried about many things that happen, not happen. Quite often we start focusing more on preserving life rather than expending life. And so therefore you see a lot of people are constantly looking into health and this and that. Somehow we have this desire that we can preserve and hold life and live longer. We are not going to live longer. We're going to live as long as we want to live. So rather spending more effort towards that kind of attitude, where we are just worrying about preserving life. Of course, we should worry about living healthy life and try to live healthy life, but spend more time on expending life. How did I spend that one day? And therefore structure our day. And I would suggest in time management that we, have 24 hours. And in self-empowerment means that, we start with gratitude in the morning. We should have some kind of morning routine where we get our mindset right for the day and think of day as one life, as a whole life. So we live many lives actually this way. And a day becomes a very powerful thing because it's a whole life. And on that day, you place for ourselves some work that we need to do, or what we can achieve. Have 2 or 3 goals for the work-related goals, some family goals, some self-development goal, recreation goal, dawah goal. We all hold the aman of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in terms of our personal, social, work or business and family, we should have, and self-learning, I would say these 5 areas, have 1 or 2 goals and try to see and evaluate that how much of my time have I spent in achieving those. And start with simple, 1 at a time, maybe 2 at a time, but we'll see how time becomes more productive. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us that Allah loves small deeds but done regularly, because that's how we really develop ourselves and become more empowered. Little we do, it gives us power to do more.
Said Nooh has raised his hand. If you can go ahead with your question, please. Christina, comment.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saab.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Thank you very much for delivering a thought-provoking session. I would like to clarify on a point which connects to the first ingredient of empowerment. You touched upon the fact that being hopeful is an important ingredient, and losing hope is a character of shaitan. And in my personal understanding, as a Muslim, being hopeful has to do with right understanding of how dua works. And I've seen from the instances of the history, in many places, for example, the history of Prophet Noah, where he had seen that his son and his wife he could not bring into Islam. And if you look at the history of Prophet Yaqub, we have seen that his son is a son is being separated from the father. And if you look at the history of Maryam alayhi salam, she's the only character in the whole Quran where somebody is expecting that I would have died before I give delivery to my child. So, and we know the toil and difficulties of the Prophet Muhammad he faced, and so in my view, I believe that understanding what is dua, and how dua works has to do with having and being hopeful and hopeless. And could you please shed light upon that and give us some direction on that?
Yes, I think, see, dua is, as one hadith mentions, is mukhul ibadah, is the essence of ibadah, or worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because dua is that connection. I did not go into full details of different acts of strengthening that iman and how, because we only chose 5 ingredients. But I'm very happy, Jazakallah khairan, for raising this 6th ingredient, I would say, if I could add to the list of dua, that our prayer is a dua, and we are taught dua to make dua all the time, to call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think it's a good answer that you reminded me, also the earlier question about arrogance, that dua is also a counter, an antidote to arrogance, because in dua we humble ourselves before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and place our trust eventually, after doing what we can do within our power. So we do within our power, so empowerment does not lead to arrogance, because after doing that, we know that nothing can and will happen and can happen without the assistance and the decision and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should definitely place in our self-empowerment dua as a major source of self-empowerment. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides and gives, and again you mentioned many examples, but you would see that even Yaqub al-Islam, that interestingly, when he eventually they are brought back to Egypt by Yusuf al-Islam, they are forgiven. Can you imagine that the brothers who threw him into the pit gave so many years of strife to the messenger of Allah, Yaqub al-Islam? Those very sons and family sons are forgiven, and they go on to live there. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has all his doors of forgiveness. His mercy prevails over everything, and his doors of mercy and forgiveness, and we should be praying for his mercy actually nowadays, because what's happening on this world is very comparable to many things we read in the Quran, when human arrogance and rebellion becomes too great, that how Allah completely seizes them as whole life. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has his mercy upon us. So yes, I would agree with you very much, and that's all I can say. That was a very clear question I could pick up, but dua is a very important subject, and we should build that in our daily routine to not just say du'as with our just lips and tongue, but actually connect to Allah, and from the depths of our heart, in the most intimate moments of our lives, in the night time particularly, ask Allah whatever bothers us and troubles us, and we will inshallah see His power, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. As we are running out of time, I think we'll have to wind up right now. Inshallah. Jazakallah khair once again to Dr. Farooq Murad.
May Allah bless you all, and may Allah enable you to have the best of Ramadan, inshallah.
So we pray that we are all among the ones who are forgiven during this month of Ramadan, and are journeying through our supplication and the guidance we have started to garner from knowing and understanding the Quran with eternal guidance. So inshallah, thank you to everyone who has attended and who has spread the word. We look forward to working with you closely in future events as well. So till then, inshallah, you all have a very good Ramadan and Eid. We'll keep in touch. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.